I'm sure many of us can attest to that. We desire to be loved, cared for, and accepted. We want to form meaningful relationships. Our souls long for something more. There is a purpose for our lives, and I ultimately believe that that purpose is found in God. I also believe that God made us to be in community with each other so that we can cherish His goodness. Many young people nowadays are wanting something more. They see the fleeting pleasures of hookup culture and no longer want to engage in it, and some don't even want to start to. I'm glad more young people are waking up to the reality that hookup culture is dehumanizing. Today, I will be talking about the harms of hookup culture and how, in comparison, biblical sexual ethics empower us. Throughout this video, I will be referencing the book Love Thy Body by Professor Nancy Pearcey. To start off, hookup culture is harmful because it dehumanizes people by encouraging a low view of sexuality, and it lacks a holistic view of the person. Professor Nancy Pearcey talks about how hookup culture is characterized by a body-person divide. It can be explained in this way. Professor Pearcey states that young people assume that sexual relationships can be solely physical, lower story, disconnected from the mind and emotions, upper story, with clean lines between them. Pearcey says, a college student named Alicia says, hookups are very scripted. You learn to turn off everything except your body and make yourself emotionally invulnerable. Statements like this encourage a low view of sexuality and a low view of the person. Sex is something that is beautiful and created by God, and hookup culture encourages a detached view of the person. Instead of sex being seen as something that is the integration of the mental, emotional, and physical, it is seen as something solely physical. Pearcey points out this flaw in hookup culture and says that sexuality is treated not as an embodied expression of our selfhood, but merely as an instrument for physical release and recreation. She also expresses that sex is not only about biological drives and needs, whether for pleasure or reproduction, but also about the communion of persons. The communion of male and female is meant to mirror the communion of divine persons within the Trinity. According to the Bible, our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. If that's not a high view of the body, I don't know what is, y'all. I don't know what is. The implication that our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit means that we must honor and glorify God with our bodies and live according to His design. Pearcey highlights this and says, Paul then says something truly stunning. Your bodies are a temple of the Holy Spirit, 1 Corinthians 6:19. The temple was a sacred place where people went to meet with God. Astonishingly, this passage is saying that your body is where people will meet God, and other people's bodies are where you will see God. Now let me read you a passage from 1 Corinthians 6:18-20, because I believe it is very important in this whole discussion. And it says, flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. Also, it's worthy to point out that casual sex can have a negative impact on a person's mental and emotional well-being. Pearcey says the irony is that impersonal sex is rarely satisfying, even to the person who seeks it out. The pleasure of sexual activity is not just physical. When we reach out for another person, we are not driven by a desire for sheer physical pleasure, but by a hope for at least some level of personal contact. William Beardsley, psychiatry professor at Harvard University, says young people are trying to persuade themselves that true sexual intimacy is unconnected from personal intimacy, but they are fooling themselves. Humans can't help functioning as a body-person unit, which is just what the biblical worldview says we are. Biblical sexual ethics are often seen as disempowering and oppressive, and this couldn't be further from the truth. As Julie Slattery and Dana Gresh write in Pulling Back the Shades, the truth is that you were created for something more. Your sexuality was never meant to be separate from your deepest spiritual and relational longings, but to be an expression of them. Additionally, there is beauty in exercising self-control. Proverbs 25:28 says, "A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls." We should not lack self-control, so much so that we feel like we must immediately gratify any sexual inclination or urge with one-night stands and flings. Remember that there is beauty in saving yourself for marriage, and there is also beauty in living single and celibate, whether in the short term, temporarily, until you get married, or for the long term as a lifelong commitment. We shouldn't give ourselves up so easily. I don't think something so intimate as sex should be considered casual. I think treating it as such further dehumanizes both parties. I believe sex should be for the person that you are married to. And the period of abstinence before marriage gives both the man and the woman time to cultivate emotional intimacy, which can lead to a more fruitful marriage. You, right here, listening to this video, you are of great value, and you should treat yourself according to that truth. I made this video because I truly want better for people. I truly care about others, and I don't want them to settle for less because they are made with great value by God. You are an image bearer of the Most High God. I hope this video blessed somebody, and I hope that you have a wonderfully blessed day. Bye, y'all.